We have put an esophagostomy tube in your cat. This tube allows you to feed the cat at home without being stressful to the cat at all. The feeding tube goes through a very small incision in the side of the neck. It goes into the esophagus, but it does not go all the way into the stomach. There's a valve at the end of the esophagus that opens to let food go into the stomach, and then it closes to keep gastric acid from refluxing back into the esophagus. If the tube goes all the way into the stomach, that valve stays open and we end up with some gastric reflux. Therefore, because the volume of the esophagus is much less than the stomach, we have to be careful that we don't put too much food in too rapidly. So we're going to do several things to keep that from happening. The first thing is that we're going to have the cat's front end elevated. Now there are several ways to do that. You can do it as we show here with the cat's front end resting on a bath towel, or you can put the cat's front feet in your hand and just lift it up. But we want it to be approximately a 30 to 40 degree angle on the elevation. We have a written set of instructions, and in this instruction it starts by telling you that we have a special food for this purpose. This food is very high in calories, it's very high in protein, it's very nutritious for the cat. It doesn't have a very good taste, so we don't recommend that you try to feed your cat this food out of a bowl or with a syringe, but it works extremely well for feeding tubes. The instructions tell you to put 2 cans of maximum calorie into a blender with about an ounce of water and blend it so that it's nice and smooth. The first step in the feeding process is to take the cap off. And this cap simply unscrews. We have food in a syringe. This is a 12 cc syringe. You put the syringe directly onto the feeding tube and you inject it. Now the second thing to do to keep from getting too much in the esophagus at one time is to go fairly slowly. So we're going to go about 1 cc per second. So this entire 12 cc's of food should take approximately 12 seconds. If it's a bit longer than that, that's fine. After this syringe is emptied, then your instructions will tell you how many syringes will be fed at each feeding. So you'll take this one off, and then you would put the next one on for the next until the feeding is completed. When the last syringe has been administered, then we're going to flush the feeding tube with a syringe of tap water. This is a smaller syringe. This is simply tap water. You just flush it through, and that clears the food from the tube. Take the syringe off and put the cap on. You may have noticed the water tried to bubble back as soon as I pulled the syringe off, so you want to be sure to have the cap ready to go. If it does bubble back, you just simply take a tissue and clean it off. That completes the feeding process. You put the unused food back in the refrigerator. It's good for about 5 days. You will heat it before the next feeding. Heating is important because if the food is cold, it will, first of all, be very difficult to push out of the syringe, and second of all, the cat is more likely to vomit if the food is too cold. You can also get the food too hot. So what you want to do is put a small amount of it on your forearm, just like you were testing food for a baby, to be sure the temperature is comfortable. Before the next feeding, take the syringe and pull the plunger out. Put it into the food, because the food acts as a lubricant to allow the plunger to run smoothly in the barrel. When you finish feeding, you want to pull the syringe apart, rinse it out, and then it's better if you don't put the syringe back, the barrel that you don't put the plunger back into the barrel, because the cork will stay wet and it will swell, and it gets to where it doesn't run very smoothly and you have to replace it after just a few uses. By proper cleaning and drying, then these syringes can be used quite a number of times.